Please note, this video contains stereotypical language, including a slur for Romani people. Listen at your own risk. Heathcliff is a person of color. Hi, I'm Morgan. I've been reading Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë for the third time. It's my favorite book, and I'm finding new nuance to it as I'm older and experiencing the story again. I didn't realize how much racism and discrimination that Heathcliff faces for his perceived race/ethnicity the first 2 times that I read the novel. He's a character that is actively treated as an other and badly for being an outsider. I originally thought it was kind of just normal, typical small-town behavior. The area where the novel takes place, Wuthering Heights, the Grange, and the village of Gimmerton, is remote and isolated, but then I noticed how he was treated significantly worse by the Lintons than Catherine. Unfair treatment of Heathcliff by the Lintons. In Chapter 6, the elder Catherine and Heathcliff get caught trespassing on the Lintons' property when Catherine's leg gets bit by their dog, Skulker. "What pray, Robert?" hallooed Linton from the entrance. "Skulker has got a little girl, sir," he replied, "and there's a lad here," he added, making a clutch at me, "who looks an out-and-outer." Right off the bat, Heathcliff is referred to as an out-and-outer, whereas Cathy is simply a little girl. "Very like the robbers were for putting them through the window to open the doors to the gang after all were asleep, that they might murder us at their ease. Hold your tongue, you foul-mouthed thief, you! You shall go to the gallows for this, Mr. Linton, sir. Don't lay by your gun." Heathcliff is assumed to be a robber, even though at this point in the novel he is only 13 years old. The Reader's Guide to Wuthering Heights has a timeline that infers how old characters were at various points in the novel based on other information in the text, and Catherine and Heathcliff are listed as being 12 and 13, respectively, when Catherine stays at Thrushgrass Grange. Mr. Linton's response is, "No, no, Robert," said the old fool. "The rascals knew that yesterday was my rent day. They thought to have me cleverly. Come in, I'll furnish them a reception. There, John, fasten the chain. Give Skulker some water, Jenny. To beard a magistrate in his stronghold, and on the Sabbath, too. Where will their insolence stop? Oh, my dear Mary, look here. Don't be afraid. It is but a boy. Yet the villain scowls so plainly in his face. Would it not be a kindness to the country to hang him at once before he shows his nature and acts as well as features?" As well as features could be referring simply to Heathcliff's scowl. However, it's important to keep in mind that physiognomy or face reading was considered an actual science at the time when Wuthering Heights was written. According to Abby Cox's video, we need to talk about TikTok's obsession with face reading and its dark history.
And physiognomy is the study of your facial characteristics, your appearance, the shape of your nose, the size of your eyes, your eyebrows, your forehead size, cheekbones, lips, all of it, as a way to read someone's personality, to be able to make decisions about their character, morality, things like that. So you're reading the face. That's why people today call it face reading.
This is important context, as 19th century readers of Wuthering Heights may have known about or believed in physiognomy. So the line, "Yet the villain scowls so plainly in his face, would it not be a kindness to the country to hang him at once, before he shows his nature and acts as well as features," could have been interpreted by contemporary readers through the lens of physiognomy. So it's possible that a contemporary reader might have heard it and been like, "Well, based on what I know of physiognomy, Heathcliff seems like he's predisposed to be evil." But the thing is, I also learned that phrenology was used to promote racism.
You cannot separate physiognomy, phrenology from white supremacy, colonization, racism, and oppression of people, and genocide.
And
we know that these were tools for racism. We know that the people using these things and participating in physiognomy in the 19th and 20th centuries were racist. That was the point of physiognomy, was racism.
So characters using Heathcliff's facial features to make judgments about him could have been an act of racism that is overlooked by modern readers. The text continues with Heathcliff recounting his tale to Nelly. He pulled me under the chandelier, and Mrs. Linton placed her spectacles on her nose and raised her hands in horror. The cowardly children crept nearer also, Isabella lisping, "Frightful thing! Put him in the cellar, Papa! He's exactly like the son of that fortune-teller that stole my tame pheasant. Isn't he, Edgar?" Isabella thinks that Heathcliff looks like a fortune-teller. There is a stereotype about fortune-tellers being gypsies, and so it's implied from the context that Isabella thinks he looks like a gypsy. My intent in bringing this up is to provide historical context. Please note that the G word and its associated stereotypes are hurtful. I want to state that I condemn racism and that prejudice against Romani people is not okay. The text continues. While they examined me, Kathy came round. She heard the last speech and laughed. Edgar Linton, after an inquisitive stare, collected sufficient wit to recognize her. "They see us at church, you know, though we seldom meet them elsewhere. That's Miss Earnshaw," he whispered to his mother. "And look how Skulker has bitten her, how her foot bleeds." The line, "They see us at church, you know," suggests to me that the Lintons should be able to recognize both Catherine and Heathcliff, yet Isabella mistakes Heathcliff for a fortune-teller. "Miss Earnshaw? Nonsense!" cried the dame. "Miss Earnshaw scouring the country with a gypsy! And yet, my dear, the child is in mourning. Surely it is, and she may be lamed for life." So Heathcliff is being referred to as a gypsy. He's actively being seen as and categorized by the Lintons as an other. "What culpable carelessness in her brother!" exclaimed Mr. Linton, turning from me to Catherine. "I've understood from Shielders, that was the curate, sir, that he let her grow up in absolute heathenism. But who is this? Where did she pick up this companion? Oh ho! I declare he is that strange acquisition my late neighbor made in his journey to Liverpool, a little Lascar, or an American or Spanish castaway." According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary website, a Lascar is an Indian sailor, army servant, or artilleryman. While his perceived race isn't entirely clear, what's clear is that the Lintons can tell from Heathcliff's appearance that he is other. He doesn't look like what they expect an English person to look like. He doesn't look like some random farm laborer. Something about him looks different to them. "A wicked boy, at all events," remarked the old lady, "and quite unfit for a decent house. Did you notice his language, Linton? I'm shocked that my children should have heard it." Heathcliff ends up getting thrown out, but Catherine is allowed to stay. Of course, Catherine was hurt, and Heathcliff was behaving very badly. But at the same time, both of them were trespassing. It seems deeply unfair to me that Heathcliff is being treated so much harsher than Catherine was. I can't help but wonder if there was an element of racism or other prejudice that led to Heathcliff being treated as badly as he was. Nelly's remarks in Chapter 7. There's a hint that Heathcliff is a person of color in Chapter 7. Catherine's just returned home from her stay with the Lintons. She upsets Heathcliff by laughing at him. Heathcliff's not in a good mood and is comparing himself to Edgar Linton. He's alone in the kitchen with Nelly, who tries to comfort/console him. "But Nelly, if I knocked him," referring to Edgar, "down 20 times, that wouldn't make him less handsome, or me more so. I wish I had light hair and a fair skin, and was dressed and behaved as well, and had a chance of being as rich as he will be." This particular line shouldn't be interpreted as a reference to his race, as the older Catherine later remarks, "I'm not envious. I never feel hurt at the brightness of Isabella's yellow hair, and the whiteness of her skin, and her dainty elegance, and the fondness all the family exhibit for her," in Chapter 10. What these two lines do show, though, is that both Heathcliff and Catherine have a darker complexion than Edgar and Isabella, yet they only call Heathcliff a gypsy, and not Catherine. Catherine does not face the same level of othering and discrimination as Heathcliff does. In the Chapter 7 kitchen scene, we also have the paragraph, A good heart will help you to a bonny face, my lad, Nelly continues. If you were a regular black, and a bad one will turn the bonniest into something worse than ugly. And now that we've done washing, and combing, and sulking, tell me whether you don't think yourself rather handsome. I'll tell you, I do. You're fit for a prince in disguise. Who knows but your father was Emperor of China, and your mother an Indian queen, each of them able to buy up, with 1 week's income, Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange together. And you were kidnapped by wicked sailors and brought to England. Were I in your place, I would frame high notions of my birth, and the thoughts of what I was should give me courage and dignity to support the oppressions of a little farmer. I'd like to start by saying that this paragraph is racist. It is important to bring up, though, because it shows that Nelly thinks Heathcliff is a person of color. If he could be the son of the Emperor of China and an Indian queen, then that tells me that she perceives him as being ethnically ambiguous. It's not clear to me from the paragraph what Heathcliff's race actually is, but it's strong evidence to me that he's perceived as being a person of color. Lockwood's impression. Lockwood also perceives Heathcliff as being a person of color. As part of a larger paragraph, Mr. Lockwood states, "But Mr. Heathcliff forms a singular contrast to his abode and style of living. He is a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect, in dress and manners a gentleman, that is, as much a gentleman as many a country squire, rather slovenly, perhaps, yet not looking amiss with his negligence, because he has an erect and handsome figure, and rather morose." The statement that Heathcliff is, in dress and manners, a gentleman shows that it's not his clothes that are making people think he's different, and he's explicitly called a dark-skinned gypsy. At this point in the story, Lockwood doesn't know Heathcliff's history, and Lockwood himself is new to the area. He wouldn't have any preconceived notions about Heathcliff to suggest that he's an outsider. He offers a unique perspective in that he doesn't know about Heathcliff's past and is giving his first impressions of him. Clearly, Heathcliff is a person of color. He's not white, or else Lockwood wouldn't be thinking of a man he just met as a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect. Here are some other examples of Heathcliff being referred to as the G word. In addition to the previously mentioned examples of he is a dark-skinned gypsy in aspect, and dress and manners a gentleman, comment in Chapter 1, and the Miss Earnshaw scouring the country with a gypsy statement in Chapter 6, there are 4 more examples of Heathcliff being referred to explicitly as a gypsy within the text. When Mr. Earnshaw first brings Heathcliff home in Chapter 4, Mrs. Earnshaw's response is, "Mrs. Earnshaw was ready to fling it out of doors. She did fly up, asking how he could fashion to bring that gypsy brat into the house, when they had their own bairns to feed and fend for, what he meant to do with it, and whether he were mad." In Chapter 4, Hindley tells Heathcliff, "Take my colt, gypsy then." It's noteworthy that Hindley does not like Heathcliff, though, and has motivation to be mean to him. In Chapter 6, after Cathy has ran off into the rain in search of Heathcliff, part of Joseph's line is, "It's bonny behaviour lurking among the fields after 12 of the night, with that foul, fullasome devil of a gypsy Heathcliff." And in Chapter 9, when Heathcliff has just returned after a long time missing, Nelly tells Linton that he's coming to visit with the line, Someone mistress does not expect." I replied, "That Heathcliff. You recollect him, sir, who used to live at Mr. Earnshaw's?" And Edgar Linton responds, "What? The gypsy? The ploughboy?" he cried. "Why did you not say so to Catherine?" Additional textual evidence of Heathcliff's skin tone. In Chapter 10, when Heathcliff returns and asks Nelly, "Is that you?" and Nelly has not yet recognized him, she describes her thoughts about him as, "It was a deep voice, and foreign in tone, yet there was something in the manner of pronouncing my name which made it sound familiar. I turned about to discover who spoke, fearfully, for the doors were shut, and I'd seen nobody on approaching the steps. Something stirred in the porch, and, moving nearer, I distinguished a tall man, dressed in dark clothes, with dark face and hair. He leant against the side, and held his fingers on the latch as if intending to open as if intending to open for himself. Heathcliff has dark face and hair, so when she is referring to him as dark, it's not just about his hair. To me, this is more evidence that he's a person of color. In chapter 24, after Heathcliff inherits the Grange, Nelly once again describes him as having a dark face. Heathcliff advanced to the hearth. Time had little altered his person either. There was the same man, his dark face rather sallower and more composed, his frame a stone or two heavier, perhaps, and no other difference. Why Heathcliff's race matters. Heathcliff is treated as an other or an outsider throughout the novel Wuthering Heights. This directly impacts his life and is integral to his overall story. It's clear to me that his racial and ethnic background, whether real or perceived, impacts the way that other characters in the novel treat him. He faces struggles and stigmatization within the society that he lives for an immutable characteristic, something entirely out of his control. There are many people who face the same challenges as Heathcliff in the modern day. Heathcliff's race matters because he is impacted by racism. There are people today who are also impacted by racism, who deserve to see their own struggles represented in the media that they consume. Pretending that Heathcliff's race doesn't matter is ignoring a crucial part of his story and the challenges that he faces as a non-white person living in a predominantly white society. I personally think that representation matters. Being able to read about different people's perspectives can be inspiring and help us learn to be more empathetic as individuals. I think that it's important to read about the struggles that different people from different backgrounds face. It can be hard and uncomfortable, but it helps us to grow as humans. Thank you for listening to me explain why Heathcliff is a person of color and show you textual evidence to back up my claim. I hope that this video inspires you and that you have a great day. We're excited, and the "We're excited" will be typed out in the description for accessibility.